Hi, my name is Gary Schnell. And again, I'd like to thank you for joining me here in my home near Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I've been doing a series of YouTube videos in an effort to highlight different elements of my recently published book, Consciousness, All in One and One in All. I have been looking at chapter 14. I just completed a talk regarding chapter 14, which is entitled Volition and Spirituality. The first part of the talk essentially involved the volitional element and the neural changes that are associated with meditation. This talk will more focus on the spirituality element and draw some parallels between the spirituality associated with meditation and quantum physics. Now, in the previous presentation, we talked about the effects of meditation, being in the moment, focus on the breath, and the changes that are made away from the amygdala and towards the insula, away from the sympathetic nervous system and towards the parasympathetic nervous system, away from the stress associated with the sympathetic nervous system and the cortisol that is released when that stress is experienced, and towards the parasympathetic nervous system, the peace in the moment, the release of dopamine and endorphins, and essentially away from the ego or the narrative or the default mode network, and towards a interdependence, compassion, empathy, resiliency, focus, awareness of social cues, sensitivity to context, and a more positive outlook, an increase in self-awareness. These are the kinds of changes that come about with a meditation practice, choosing to pursue a meditation practice. These are the changes that we experience neurologically. Now, I'm going to put forth the idea that being in the moment and this interdependence and this awareness is not consistent with Newtonian classical physics, but more consistent with the underlying physics of the quantum. Let me show you what I mean. There was an ancient philosopher, Zeno, who came up with a number of paradoxes. And one of the paradoxes that he developed had to do with an arrow in flight. And he postulated, put forth the idea that in any given moment, that arrow is not moving. In any given moment, there is no difference between past and future. There is no movement. And what we know now is that this kind of idea is consistent with the electron, a given element. Electrons surround the nucleus, as you may recall, and these electrons surround the nucleus in what are known as shells. Now, when an electron changes shells or leaves the area of the nucleus, there's no in between. It's either in one shell or another shell. It's not between shells. When it leaves the area of the nucleus, it is either in the area of the nucleus or it's not in the area of the nucleus. There is no in between. It's kind of where we get the idea that if you continue to observe the same quantum, there will be no change. It's all or none. And essentially, what is being proposed is that the movement, any movement, is an illusion of space-time. In the moment, no space-time. In the past and in the future, space-time. Now, let me extend this. Space-time, as we examined earlier in this book, is not primary to the universe. Space, for example, is in its locality, there is an underlying element, non-locality. Space can be experienced differently, as we might recall from Einstein's relativity. Time can be experienced differently, as we also recall from Einstein's relativity. These kinds of things suggest that space and time are not primary to the universe. There's something else that's primary to the universe. Now, the photon is the quintessential moment, the speed of light. It's in the moment. The electron, as it is traveling at the speed of light, is in the moment. This is kind of like the frames of a movie. Consider that when we watch a movie, one frame is in the moment. All the past frames are in the past, and all the future frames are in the future of the movie. So that the use of the projector gives us the illusion that each of these still frames is moving, and we're seeing movement on the screen that the projector is aimed at. But each of these frames is still, it's in the moment. The projector imbues the frames with space and time. It gives us the illusion of movement as a function of, at least as far as the role of film is concerned. Now, each frame, again, is in the moment. Experience is in the moment. All other frames are in the past and future. All other experiences are in the past or will be in the future. Experience itself is in the moment. It is the me in the moment. It is the first person me in the moment. And it is imbued, this first person me in the moment is imbued with a past and future by a third person observer. So the first person me is in the moment, and the observer, third person, objectifies me, names my experiences, names things around me. In the moment, these things have no name. They are experienced. But in the illusion of space and time, we give them names. We measure them, as we do in classical physics and Newtonian physics. But this is all the stuff of third person. It is all the stuff of space-time. It is the illusion of space-time. It is not the primary stuff of the universe. It is not the stuff of photons. It is not the stuff of electrons. It is not the stuff of quantum physics, which are the underlying elements of the universe, closer to the primary stuff of the universe. So in science, we can measure things in space-time. We objectify them. We give them names, and we use things that involve our space and time. That, I think, is where the confusion over the different interpretations of quantum physics lies, that we talked about back in chapter 8, that we are trying to measure something, objectify it, that can't be objectified. It's in the moment that we experience it. It's not in the past. It's not in the future. It's in the moment. It's in the first person. The process of measurement obfuscates the moment of quantum physics. This led Einstein to quip in a letter to the family of a friend who had recently died that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. So when not distracted by the me, not me of the the ego or the default mode network or the narrative. It is in the moment that we are most aware of our interconnectedness, our interdependence with the universe, expressed by things like entanglement, non-locality, that are two of the four principles of quantum physics. So consider the ramifications. The first person experience is in the moment, and it is the stuff of interdependence. It is the stuff of empathy, compassion, the stuff of love. While third person, with a past and a future, might be considered the stuff of anxiety, stress, fear, the depression that's associated with regrets of the past, or the fear and anxiety that's associated with potential dangers of the future. And what I would like to ask you to consider is that the stuff in the moment, the compassion, love, empathy, that stuff is the stuff that makes up the most noble and best of human experience. The Abraham Lincolns, the Mahatma Gandhis, the Mother Teresa, the great, beautiful poetry that we have, the wonderful works of art, paintings, a painting like a frame of a movie in the moment, experienced in the moment. The selfless, the billions and billions of selfless acts that people have performed for other people, for animals, those are in the moment. They are selfless. They are not the stuff of the ego or the default mode network. The stuff of the ego and the default mode network we might consider the worst of human experience. The fears associated with the objectifying ego divide us. They are the stuff of wars. They are the stuff of terrorism, atrocities, hateful acts, tribalism. So we have the first person moment of peace and the third person stuff of fear and anxiety. So consider then, back in chapters 1, 2, and 3, we talked about the me, not me. We talked about the narrative. We talked about the spiritual levels developed by Marion, so that we had 9 spiritual levels. And the first 5 of those spiritual levels are associated with the narrative. The next 4 spiritual levels are beyond the narrative. They are timeless. They cannot be labeled. So what I'm suggesting is that meditation affords the opportunity to transcend those first 5 levels and be in the moment and experience potentially the final 4 levels, the levels beyond space and time, the levels of peace, empathy, compassion, so that we have essentially come full circle. I want to thank you for staying with me through these chapters. There will be one more presentation. It will be in some ways the easiest presentation and in some ways the hardest presentation. But it will be talking about the dark night of the soul, specifically my dark night of the soul, and what that has to do with the moment, the ego, default mode network, and what it has to do with the book that I've written, the ideas that I've presented. I invite you to join me for that in my final video. Again, I want to thank you for your time, your attention. I want to ask you to take care of yourselves and be well. Subscribe if you're interested. Any questions you have, you can put forth on YouTube, or I have a website you can put those questions towards, and I'd be happy to answer them. You be well. Bye now.